Good morning. My name is Pastor Chris Cervantes, and this morning I'm going to begin sharing, just reading aloud, White Fragility, which it doesn't look like is mirroring well here, but it is by Robin DiAngelo, and the full title is White Fragility: Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism. It's by Robin DiAngelo with a foreword by Michael Eric Dyson. I'm going to just be reading this and posting a chapter or so per day. I'll post at 2 p.m. each day, Tuesday through Friday, until we're finished. I will try to be available some of those days to, just have comments in the chat section, in the comments section if you guys want to discuss it. But for now, let's just go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to light our chalice here. As we share this time together, I just ask us to remember all those who are in such deep pain at this time. The families and the friendships, the communities that are being torn apart by racism, which is, frankly, a white people problem, not a black people problem. So, with that as our chalice lighting, here we go. I'm going to begin with the foreword by Michael Eric Dyson. The title of the foreword is Kaiser Soze, Beyonce, and the Witness Protection Program. One metaphor for race and racism won't do. They are, after all, exceedingly complicated forces. No, we need many metaphors working in concert, even if in different areas of culture, through a clever division of linguistic language. Linguistic labor. Race is a condition, a disease, a card, a plague, original sin. For much of American history, race has been black culture's issue, racism a black person's burden. Or substitute any person of color for black, and you've got the same problem. Whiteness, however, has remained constant. In the equation of race, another metaphor for race beckons. Whiteness is the unchanging variable. Or, to shift metaphors, whiteness has been, to pinch Amiri Baraka's resonant phrase, the changing same, a highly adaptable and fluid force that stays on top no matter where it lands. In a sense, whiteness is at once the means of dominance, the end to which dominance points, and the point of dominance too, which in its purest form, in its greatest fantasy, never ends. To be sure, like the rest of race, whiteness is a fiction, what in the jargon of the Academy is termed a social construct, an agreed-on myth that has empirical grit because of its effect, not its essence. But whiteness goes one even better. It is a category of identity that is most useful when its very existence is denied. That's its twisted genius. Whiteness embodies Charles Baudelaire's admonition that the loveliest trick of the devil is to persuade you that he does not exist. Or, as an alter ego of the character Kaiser Soze says in the film The Usual Suspects, the greatest trick the devil ever played was to convince the world that he didn't exist. The devil. Racism. Another metaphor. Same difference. Robin DiAngelo is here to announce, in the words of evangelicals and rappers like Rick Ross and Jay-Z, the devil is a lie. Whiteness, like race, may not be true. It's not a biologically heritable characteristic that has roots in physiological structures or in genes or in chromosomes, but it is real in the sense that societies and rights and goods and resources and privileges have been built on its foundation. DiAngelo brilliantly names a whiteness that doesn't want to be named, disrobes a whiteness that dresses in camouflage as humanity, unmasks a whiteness costumed as American, and fetches to center stage a whiteness that would rather hide in its visible invisibility. It is not enough to be a rhetorician and a semiotician to deconstruct and demythologize whiteness. One must be a magician of the political and the social, an alchemist of the spiritual and psychological too. One must wave off racist stereotypes and conjure a rich history of combating white supremacy and white privilege and white lies, a history that has often been buried deep in the dark, rich, black American soil. DiAngelo knows that what she is saying to white folk in this book is what so many black folks have thought and believed and said over the years, but couldn't be heard because white ears were too sensitive, white souls too fragile. DiAngelo joins the front ranks of white anti-racist thinkers with a stirring call to conscience and, most important, consciousness in her white brothers and sisters. White fragility is a truly generative idea. It is a crucial concept that inspires us to think more deeply about how white folk understand their whiteness and react defensively to being called to account for how that whiteness has gone under the radar of race for far too long. DiAngelo is wise and withering in her relentless assault on what Langston Hughes termed the ways of white folks, but she is clear-eyed and unsentimental in untangling the intertwined threads of social destiny and political prescription that bind white identity to moral neutrality and cultural universality. DiAngelo bravely challenges the collapse of whiteness into national identity. No less an authority than Beyonce Knowles recently remarked, "It's been said that racism is so American that when we protest racism, some assume we are protesting America." DiAngelo proves that Beyonce is right, that the flow of white identity into American identity, of racist beliefs into national beliefs, must be met head-on with a full-throated insistence that what it means to be American is not what it means to be white, at least not exclusively or even primarily. This nation is far more complicated in its collective self-understanding. DiAngelo, in a masterly way, takes apart the notion that identity politics is a scourge, at least when it involves people of color and women. She blows down the house of white racial cards built on the premise that it can or should rest on something beyond identity politics. DiAngelo forces us to see that all politics have rested on identities, and that those identities are critical features of wrestling with how we have gone wrong in our efforts to set things right, which too often has meant to make them white. We cannot possibly name the nemesis of democracy, or truth, or justice, or equality if we cannot name the identities to which they have been attached. For most of our history, straight white men have been involved in a witness protection program that guards their identities and absolves them of their crimes while offering them a future free of past encumbrances and sins. Robin DiAngelo is the new racial sheriff in town. She is bringing a different law and order to bear upon the racial proceedings. Instead of covering up for a whiteness that refused to face up to its benefits and advantages, its errors and its faults, she has sought to uphold the humanity of the unjustly maligned while exposing the offenses of the undeservedly celebrated. White fragility is an idea whose time has come. It is an idea that registers the hurt feelings, shattered egos, fraught spirits, vexed bodies, and taxed emotions of white folk. In truth, their suffering comes from recognizing that they are white, that their whiteness has given them a big leg up in life while crushing others' dreams, that their whiteness is the clearest example of the identity politics they claim is harmful to the nation, and that their whiteness has shielded them from growing up as quickly as they might have done had they not so heavily leaned on it to make it through life. White Fragility is a vital, necessary, and beautiful book, a bracing call to white folk everywhere to see their whiteness for what it is and to seize the opportunity to make things better now. Robin DiAngelo kicks all the crutches to the side and demands that white folk finally mature and face the world they've made while seeking to help remake it for those who have neither their privilege nor their protection. Thank you for joining me for our very first installment. This is, of course, the introduction by Michael Eric Dyson to White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. Again, sorry for the non-mirroring. We shall fix that. All right. Have a good day. Think long and hard, and keep an open mind.